Welcome to our short demo movie on how to migrate server workloads with PlateSpin Migrate to Microsoft Azure. We're going to focus on the bare essentials today, so I will kick it off right away and start by adding a target. So I click on the Targets tab, click the Add Target button, and then from the drop-down list in the middle, I select the appropriate target type, which is Azure location. Provide subscription ID, application ID, username, password, so everything that's needed to successfully discover a Microsoft Azure location. I select a specific location that I want to migrate to, so in this case that's going to be Central US. I test the credentials, and then when this test is successful, I simply click the Add button so that PlateSpin can completely discover the Azure location. While that is happening, let's add a couple of source workloads. So I click on the Workloads tab, and now on the Add Workload button. And in this demo movie, I'm going to use the simplest way of adding source workloads, which is to just discover them by IP address. So I provide an IP address, administrative credentials, tester credentials, click Add New. And I'm just going to add a couple more. In my lab here, I have one Windows 2008 workload and two Windows 2012 workloads. So I'm just adding the other two, provide credentials, test credentials, click Add Workload, and now these workloads are discovering. Discovery happens quite rapidly, so they are now all discovered. So let's just start with configuring the first workload for migration. So I select it, I click the Configure Migration button. Here on this screen, you can select the target that you're going to migrate to if you have multiple targets discovered, but in this case we only have one target, which is the Central US location that we configured earlier. So I'm just going to leave that selected, click Configure Migration. This is the main workload migration configuration page. In this demo, we're going to focus on the migration settings that are relevant for migrations to Microsoft Azure. So I'm just going to scroll down here, and the first setting that we're going to talk about is cloud instance size. PlateSpin discovers the resources on the source workload and will suggest the cloud instance size that's appropriate. But you can of course change that. So if I click Change Cloud Instance Size, you see that we discover all the cloud instance size types, and you can essentially pick anyone that is applicable to you. I'm just going to cancel out of that right now. A second setting that I want to talk about is the Azure Resource Group. So as you can see, PlateSpin will by default create a new resource group for your target server in Microsoft Azure, but you can also select any of the resource groups that are discovered, and you can even blank out that field and type in a name for your resource group, so a custom name if you desire. Next up is the storage account. So we discover all the storage accounts. So you essentially can just pick the storage account that you want to use for your target workload in Microsoft Azure. And the next setting that we need to talk about is the replication network. So this is the network that is used for the replication traffic. In this case, I'm just going to select our network here, PlateSpin test, and I'm going to select the subnet. Note that if I click here on Edit, I have the option to set a public IP address. I'm just going to close out of that here. And let's scroll down to the network settings for the target workload in production. So this is not necessarily the replication network. This is the network that will be used by the target workload after cutover. So I'm essentially just using the same network here, PlateSpin test subnet 3. And again, if I click on Edit here, you can see that I have the option to create a public IP address. Just closing out of that. So those are the production network settings. Now I'm just going to copy this for the test environment. So these settings will be used every time we bring the workload up for testing. And also here, I have the option to create or set a public IP address. Okay, so now our migration configuration is complete. So I click the Save and Prepare button. And essentially, all I need to do is confirm with the execute action here, and then PlateSpin Migrate will prepare the migration. This goes pretty rapidly, usually takes a couple of minutes, but I'm just fast forwarding through that here. So at this stage, the migration is prepared, which means that I can now click the Run Migration button at the bottom here to start the first full replication of the workload. As you can see, I have the option here to immediately run a cutover. I'm, however, not going to do that because that means that we would not have an opportunity to test our migration before we roll it out in production. So I'm just going to click the Execute button here. And this kicks off the first full replication. Again, I'm fast forwarding through this first full replication. The workload is now completely replicated, but it's not been cut over yet. So our source workload is still up and running, because what we want to do first is test our replica in Microsoft Azure to see if it's running correctly. It's very easy. I just click the test cutover button here at the bottom. And as you can see, I have the option to perform an incremental replication. I am, however, going to unselect this checkbox here just to save some time. Performing an incremental replication prior to your test cutover is not absolutely necessary. So I'm just going to click execute here. And now PlateSpin is going to prepare the test environment. I'm also fast forwarding through those operations. Okay, the test environment has now been created in Microsoft Azure. So we can now just go to Azure. We can filter on the name of our workload to find it in the list here. So there you can see at the bottom, that's the one. So I'm just going to click on it. I'm going to select the connect action here, which gives me the opportunity to download RDP information. I click OK. This is just standard RDP, so I'm just opening the RDP connection, provide administrative credentials. Click the OK button. And here's our server, which has been spun up in a test environment. Once all testing is completed, we can close the RDP connection. And then we can return to PlateSpin. And here we can mark the test as a success or failure. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and mark the test as a success. Click the execute confirmation. And now PlateSpin will bring the test environment down. Again, I'm fast forwarding through this. And this brings us back to the replicated state. At this point, we know that our workload will run correctly in Microsoft Azure thanks to the test that we just did. So now we can proceed and cut it over in production. It's also very easy. I just click the Run Cut Over button. And here I'm going to keep the checkbox Perform Incremental Replication checked because, of course, I want to make sure that when we run our cut over in production that we capture all those latest changes, all those latest deltas. So I leave it checked. I click the Execute action. And PlateSpin is now going to run the cutover, which means it's going to perform that incremental replication, shut down the source, bring the target up in production. Once more, we have fast forwarded through all these operations, so we can now scroll down, take a look at the statistics, now that our workload has been cut over in production. And we can actually return to Azure. Again, we're going to filter on the name of our workload. There is a workload which is now running in production in Azure. Again, I click on it, click on the connect action. Once more, I download the RDP information. And this is just standard RDP. And I click the connect button, provide credentials again. And this allows us to log in our workload, which is now running in production in Microsoft Azure. Thank you for watching our short demo movie, and see you next time.